today I'm going to tell you about the story The Telltale Heart, written by the famous author Edgar Allan Poe. The brief summary of this story, as I know you've already heard numerous times, so I will not bore you with the little details. The tale tells a story about the narrator who is suffering from a mental illness as he narrates to us his meticulous plan in murdering an old man which he claims has vulture-like or predatory-like eyes. Over the course of 8 days, he clearly describes his plans in sneaking into the old man's bedroom.
And now that I'm actually going to discuss the themes, motifs, and styles. Now, the work's main theme is all about the line between rationality and madness and rationality. So the story's premise focuses on narrator denying and attempting to prove that they are not mad, okay? So there are two main symbols in the short story. The first one is the eyes, which represents the evil, and you know that. And the second one is the heart, which represents the narrator being paranoid. Now, as it becomes more clear that while they display their patience and forethought, their decisions and actions are not based on rational thought. Okay? The narrator cannot tell whether or not they lost their ability to reason out. The narrator is convinced of their sanity, that suggesting that the same thing could happen to anyone who's actually reading this book.
For the evaluation, what do you think about the story? So for me, the story is a gripping story because it dives deep into the mind of someone who's clearly losing their grip on reality. What I love about it is how Edgar Allan Poe creates tension, especially with the constant focus of the sound of a heartbeat, which drives the narrator to madness. And what are the elements that worked well is that the narrator's voice, because the story did a great job in pulling you into the mind of someone who's clearly losing their mind and is clearly not stable. And one of the elements that didn't work well for me is about the repetition, because the story often mention about the old man's eye and the sound of a heartbeat, which makes the story a little bit tiring, and it's like a note being played over and over.
For the recommendation, this story of The Telltale Heart is a gothic horror story that contains dark themes. It has an intriguing and thought-provoking plot twist, which may leave you to question the sanity of the protagonist as the story unfolds. Though it might not appeal to everyone, especially for those who are weak-hearted and are sensitive, as they may find this story disturbing. But if you are a fan of such story and genre, this story is perfect for you. So that's a further recommendation.
Moving on to the characterization. Since it's just a short story, we only have a select few characters. Starting off, we have the protagonist, which is the narrator. The narrator is presented indirectly, since his insanity and madness is slowly revealed through how he narrates the story and his obsessive nature towards the old man. His character type is flat, since he remains unchanging. His obsessive and mad behavior remains unchanging from the beginning, even towards the end after he murdered the old man. Moving on, we have the old man. The old man character's type was flat, since he also remained unchanged throughout the story. He remained his nice and quiet personality, and his presentation was direct, since it was described by the narrator at first that he was a nice old man which you would actually like if it weren't for his vulture-like eyes. And the third character we have in the story is the neighbor, which is yung chismoso na nagsumbong sa pulis. Kasi the neighbor didn't actually meet our narrator. He was just introduced by a third party, which was the three policemen. And lastly, we have the three policemen which arrived at the scene after the murder already took place. The presentation of the police were indirect, since their professionalism and expertise was shown by how well they handled investigating the whole house and how they entertained our narrator. They listened to him tell his part of the story, and their character type is flat, since it remained that way from their introduction even towards the end where they apprehend our narrator. That would be all for the characterization. Moving on, we have the plot.
Now I will discuss to you about the plot. First is the exposition. The narrator describes his hate or tells his hate about the old man. So he said that he is not mad of the old man, but he hates his vulture-like eyes. Next is the inciting incident. The narrator decided to get rid of the old man to free himself of the old man's vulture eyes because he hates the eyes of the man, but he said that he's not mad at the old man. Next is the rising action. The narrator visited countless nights in the old man's bedroom to look at the old man if he's awake or he's asleep, because during those 7 nights the narrator sees the man sleeping, so he don't have any reasons to kill the man. Next is the climax. On the 8th day, on the right night, he finally fulfilled the plan and he successfully murdered the old man in the bed. So in the 8th night, the narrator discovered that the old man is wide awake. So he has the reason to kill the man because he sees his vulture eyes. Next is the falling action. The narrator cleaned the crime scene very expertly because he hide the old man's body in the floorboard. Next is the resolution. 3 policemen arrive for an investigation because his neighbor heard a loud scream at the house. So he reported it to the. In the resolution, 3 policemen arrived at the house to investigate about what happened to the house because their neighbor reported the scene or reported it to the policeman because he or she heard something, a scream at the house. Next is the Noma is overwhelmed by his previous killing because of his paranoia, because he's paranoid because he's hearing, although the old mans are dead, he can hear loudly the heartbeat of the old man. So because of his paranoia, he confessed about what he did to the old man.
Setting. The story took place in the old man's house. Most of the story happens specifically inside the old man's bedroom. The atmosphere are dark and tense. The narrators describe the darkness as a thick and black. This atmosphere further influenced the narrator's insanity. He took advantage of this setting for him to observe the old man and plans for the old man's death.
The point of view of the story was presented through a first-person view. Our view as readers were limited by the narrator's perspective of the story, which was presented in a narrative form.